The security camera footage was damning. Karen Mitchell, 47, sliding through the Henderson's back gate at 6:23 a.m., her designer swimsuit already on, towel in hand. What started as innocent morning swims would spiral into a neighborhood war that would destroy reputations, shatter friendships, and expose secrets that some people would kill to keep buried. By the time the police arrived, Karen wasn't just banned from one pool, she was banned from an entire zip code. But the real twist: she wasn't the only one. With the first time Sarah Henderson saw Karen Mitchell in her backyard pool, she thought she was hallucinating. It was 6:30 a.m. on a Tuesday in late June, and Sarah had stumbled to the kitchen window with her coffee, still in her pajamas, hair resembling a bird's nest. The morning sun cast long shadows across their meticulously maintained backyard, highlighting the crystal-clear water of their kidney-shaped pool. And there, cutting through the water with practiced strokes, was their neighbor from 3 houses down. Sarah blinked hard, certain the early hour and lack of caffeine were playing tricks on her eyes. But no, Karen Mitchell was definitely doing laps in the Henderson family pool, her perfectly styled blonde hair somehow still immaculate despite the chlorinated water. "Mike!" Sarah called out, her voice cracking with disbelief. "Mike!" Her husband appeared in the doorway, tie half knotted, briefcase in hand. "What's wrong? Did Emma forget her?" His words died as he followed Sarah's pointing finger toward the window. Karen completed another lap, executed a professional flip turn, and continued swimming as if she owned the place. She wore a black one-piece that probably cost more than Sarah's monthly grocery budget, and her strokes were so smooth they barely created ripples. "Is that?" Mike started. "Karen Mitchell. In our pool. At 6:30 in the morning." Sarah's coffee mug trembled in her hands. "What do we do?" Mike loosened his tie completely. "We go out there and ask her what the hell she thinks she's doing." They marched outside, the morning air crisp against their skin. Karen was just finishing another lap when she noticed them. Instead of looking embarrassed or apologetic, she smiled and waved as if they were old friends meeting at the country club. "Morning, Sarah." "Mike." Karen called out, treading water effortlessly. "Gorgeous day for a swim, isn't it?" Sarah felt her jaw drop. "Karen, what are you doing in our pool?" "Swimming, obviously." Karen's laugh was light and musical, the kind that probably charmed people at dinner parties. "I hope you don't mind. I saw you weren't using it, and my pool's been having some chemical issues. The maintenance company said it'll be another week before it's safe. You hope we don't mind." Mike's voice rose an octave. "You broke into our backyard." "Broke in?" Karen looked genuinely offended. "The gate was unlocked. I just assumed." She trailed off, but her expression suggested she assumed a lot of things. Sarah glanced at her husband, noting the vein pulsing in his temple. "Karen, this is our private property. You can't just help yourself to our pool." "Of course not," Karen said, finally swimming toward the shallow end. "You're absolutely right. I should have asked first." She stood in the waist-deep water, and Sarah couldn't help but notice how the woman looked like she'd stepped out of a fitness magazine. "I'm sorry. It won't happen again." The apology seemed sincere, and Sarah felt her anger deflating slightly. Maybe this was just a misunderstanding. Karen had always been a bit presumptuous. Last year, she'd helped herself to Sarah's prized roses for a dinner party centerpiece, claiming she was sure Sarah wouldn't mind sharing such beauty. "It's fine," Sarah said, though it wasn't. "Just next time, please ask." "Of course." Karen waded toward the pool steps. "I don't suppose I could finish my laps. I've only done 20, and I usually do 40. It's important to maintain routine, you know." The audacity was breathtaking. Sarah opened her mouth to refuse, but Karen was already climbing out of the pool, water cascading off her toned body. She grabbed a towel, her own towel, Sarah realized, from one of their lounge chairs. "Actually," Mike said firmly, "I think you should go home now." Karen's smile faltered for just a moment. "Of course. I completely understand." She wrapped the towel around her waist. "Thank you for being so understanding." Not everyone would be as gracious as you two. As they watched Karen gather her things and head toward the gate, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. The woman had seemed too prepared, too comfortable. Like she'd done this before. That was weird, right? Sarah asked as Karen disappeared through the gate. Mike nodded, straightening his tie. Very weird. But at least she apologized. 3 days later, Sarah saw Karen in their pool again. This time, it was 6:15 a.m. and Karen was already halfway through what looked like a serious workout. She had goggles on and was doing butterfly strokes with the precision of someone who'd spent years on a swim team. Sarah didn't bother calling for Mike. She marched outside in her bathrobe, fury building with each step. Karen, she shouted. Karen finished her lap before acknowledging her, pulling off her goggles with a practiced motion. Oh, hi Sarah. Beautiful morning, isn't it? What are you doing here? Swimming. Karen's tone was matter-of-fact, as if they were discussing the weather. I thought about what you said, and you're right, I should have asked permission. So I'm asking now. May I please finish my workout? Sarah stared at her. You're asking permission after you've already gotten in? Well, yes. Better late than never, right? Karen's smile was radiant. I promise I'll be done in 15 minutes. 20, tops. No, Karen. Get out. Now. For the first time, Karen's expression hardened. That seems a bit harsh. I'm not hurting anything. You're trespassing. Am I? Though? Karen's voice took on a different quality, sharper, more calculating. Because I checked the property records and your pool is actually 3 inches over the property line. Technically, part of it is on public easement. Sarah felt like she'd been slapped. That doesn't give you the right to it. Of course not, Karen said quickly, her smile returning. I'm just saying, maybe we could work something out. I'm very respectful. I don't make noise. I don't bring friends, I don't leave a mess. And I could even help with maintenance costs. Get out of my pool, Karen. Our pool, Karen corrected softly. If we are being technical. Sarah turned and stormed back into the house, her hands shaking with rage. She found Mike in the kitchen, feeding their 8-year-old daughter Emma breakfast. She's back, Sarah announced. Who's back? Emma asked, chocolate milk mustache on her upper lip. Karen Mitchell. In our pool. Again. Sarah grabbed her phone. I'm calling the police. Whoa, hold on, Mike said. Maybe we should try talking to her husband first. Or the HOA. She just told me our pool is partially on public easement. Mike's spoon clattered into his cereal bowl. What? She's been doing research, Mike. This isn't some impulsive thing. She's planned this. Sarah's fingers hovered over her phone. I'm calling the cops. Wait, Emma piped up. Is she the lady who looks like a Barbie doll? Emma, eat your cereal. She seems nice. And she's really good at swimming. I watched her from my window yesterday morning. Sarah and Mike exchanged glances. Yesterday morning? Sarah asked. Emma nodded enthusiastically. She was doing these really cool flips in the water. Like a dolphin. Oh my God, Sarah breathed. She's been doing this for days. Mike was already heading for the door. I'm going to talk to her. But when they looked outside, Karen was gone. The pool was perfectly still, as if no one had been there at all. The only evidence of her presence was a small puddle near the gate and the lingering scent of expensive sunscreen. Sarah called the police anyway. Officer Martinez arrived an hour later, a tired-looking man in his 50s who seemed less than thrilled to be investigating a pool invasion. He took notes while Sarah explained the situation, nodding occasionally but not looking particularly convinced. So she's been swimming in your pool without permission, he summarized. Yes. At least 3 times that we know of. And when you asked her to leave, she left. Well, yes. But then she came back. Officer Martinez sighed. Mrs. Henderson, unless she's damaging property or refusing to leave when confronted. This is more of a civil matter. Have you tried talking to her when she's not, in the pool? Sarah felt her frustration mounting. She claims part of our pool is on public easement. Is it? I don't know. We've lived here for 12 years. No one's ever mentioned anything about easements. You might want to check your property survey, Officer Martinez suggested. And maybe install a fence or better locks if you're concerned about security. After he left, Sarah stood in her backyard, staring at the pool. The water was still disturbed from Karen's morning swim, small waves lapping against the tiles. She walked to the spot where she thought the property line might be, trying to imagine where exactly their land ended and the easement began. Mommy. Emma appeared beside her. Are you okay? Sarah looked down at her daughter's concerned face. I'm fine, sweetheart. Just thinking. About the pool lady. About the pool lady. Emma considered this. She seems lonely. Lonely. She always swims by herself. And she looks sad when she thinks no one's watching. Sarah frowned. When did you become so observant? I like watching people. Daddy says I'm going to be. Sarah spent the weekend researching Karen Mitchell with the methodical precision of someone who'd done this before. By Sunday evening, she had compiled a dossier that would make a private investigator proud. Karen Elizabeth Mitchell, née Hartwell. 47 years old. Married to David Mitchell for 19 years. 2 children, Madison, 16, and Tyler, 14. Former pharmaceutical sales rep, now full-time socialite and charity board member. President of the Willowbrook Estates Homeowners Association. Volunteer coordinator for the annual neighborhood Christmas charity auction that raised over $200,000 last year. On paper, Karen was the perfect suburban wife and mother. But Sarah had learned long ago that paper rarely told the whole story. Monday morning, Sarah was in position by 5:45 a.m. She'd moved her observation post to the guest bathroom, which offered a better angle and easier access to the backyard if needed. The camera was ready, her phone was charged, and she'd even packed a small cooler with snacks. If Karen wanted to turn this into a war of attrition, Sarah was prepared. At 6:10 a.m., the gate opened. This time, Karen came alone. She looked different, tense. Constantly checking over her shoulder. Her usual confident stride was replaced by quick, nervous movements. Something had changed. Sarah watched as Karen dropped her bag by the pool edge, but instead of immediately getting in the water, she pulled out her phone and made a call. I don't care what you're worried about, Karen's voice carried across the quiet morning air. We had a deal. Sarah couldn't hear the other side of the conversation, but Karen's body language spoke volumes. She was pacing, gesturing angrily, her perfect composure cracking. Don't you dare threaten me, Karen continued, her voice rising. You have just as much to lose as I do. More, actually. There was a long pause. Karen stopped pacing and stood very still, her face pale. Fine, she said finally. But this is the last time. After today, we are done. She hung up and stood motionless for a moment, staring at the pool. Then she seemed to collect herself, stripping down to a swimsuit and diving into the water with more force than necessary. Sarah recorded everything, her mind racing. Karen was clearly involved in something more complicated than a simple affair. The phone call suggested blackmail, threats, or some kind of arrangement that had gone wrong. Karen swam for 20 minutes, her strokes aggressive and choppy, nothing like the smooth, controlled laps Sarah had witnessed before. When she climbed out, she didn't bother drying off properly. She just threw on her clothes over her wet swimsuit. And left, water dripping behind her like a trail of guilt. Sarah waited until Karen was gone, then quietly made her way to the pool area. Near the gate, she found something Karen had dropped in her hurry to leave, a small piece of paper with a phone number scrawled on it. Back in her house, Sarah stared at the number. She could call it, but that would tip her hand. Instead, she did what she did best, she investigated. A reverse phone lookup revealed the number belonged to Marcus Chen, a 34-year-old architect who worked for Chen and Associates downtown. His LinkedIn profile showed he was married to Jennifer Chen, a pediatric nurse. They had 2 young children. Sarah felt a familiar chill. This wasn't just about adultery anymore. This was about 2 families, 2 marriages, multiple innocent children who had no idea their worlds were about to implode. She spent the afternoon driving past Marcus Chen's office building, his house, his wife's workplace. Old habits died hard. And surveillance was like riding a bicycle, you never really forgot how. Marcus Chen was handsome in a quiet, intellectual way. His wife Jennifer was pretty and looked exhausted in the way that mothers of young children always did. Their house was modest but well maintained, with children's bikes in the driveway and a small garden that someone clearly tended with love. Sarah sat in her car outside their house, watching Jennifer Chen water her flowers while her toddler played in the yard, and felt sick. Whatever Karen Mitchell was doing, it was going to destroy this family. Tuesday morning brought a new development. Sarah was at her post when the gate opened at 6:05 a.m., earlier than usual. Karen entered quickly, followed by Marcus Chen. But this time, they weren't alone. A third person slipped through the gate, a woman Sarah recognized immediately. Rebecca Santos, the neighborhood's beloved mail woman who'd been delivering mail to Willowbrook Estates for over 15 years. Rebecca was in her 50s, divorced, and lived in a small apartment complex just outside the neighborhood boundaries. Sarah's camera captured everything as the 3 of them stood by the pool, their conversation heated and urgent. She couldn't make out the words, but the body language was clear. This was a confrontation, not a romantic rendezvous. Rebecca was gesturing angrily, pointing at Karen and Marcus. Karen kept shaking her head, her arms crossed defensively. Marcus looked like he wanted to disappear entirely. The argument continued for 10 minutes before Rebecca stormed out, leaving Karen and Marcus alone. They didn't swim. They didn't touch. They just stood there in the growing daylight, looking defeated. "This is insane," Marcus said, his voice carrying clearly in the morning air. "I can't do this anymore." "You don't have a choice," Karen replied. "None of us do. There's always a choice. I could just tell Jennifer everything." Karen's laugh was bitter. "And lose your kids. Your career. Your entire life. Because that's what happens when people find out what you really are." "What I really am?" Marcus's voice rose. "What about what you really are?" "I'm a survivor," Karen said simply. "And if you're smart, you'll learn to be one too." They left. Separately, Marcus first, then Karen 5 minutes later. Sarah remained frozen at her window, her mind reeling. What had she stumbled into? Rebecca Santos had been delivering mail to their neighborhood for 15 years. She knew everyone, saw everything, had access to places and information that most people never considered. If she was involved in whatever Karen was doing, it wasn't just about an affair. Sarah spent the day researching Rebecca Santos and found very little. No criminal record, no social media presence, no obvious red flags. Just a quiet, hard-working woman who'd been recently divorced and was struggling to make ends meet on a mail carrier salary. But people in financial trouble were vulnerable. And vulnerable people made choices they never thought they'd make. Wednesday morning, Sarah was ready with a new plan. Instead of staying inside, she decided to confront the situation directly. She positioned herself in the backyard, pretending to tend to her garden, when Karen arrived at 6:08 a.m. This time, Karen came alone and seemed surprised to see Sarah outside. "Oh," Karen said, freezing halfway through the gate. "I didn't realize you were up." "I'm always up early," Sarah replied, not looking up from her roses. "I like to water the plants before it gets too hot." Karen stood awkwardly by the gate, clearly unsure how to proceed. "I suppose you're going to ask me to leave. Are you here to swim?" Yes." Sarah straightened up, wiping her hands on her gardening gloves. "Go ahead." Karen blinked in surprise. "Really? Really? But first, I'd like to ask you something." "Okay. Why my pool?" "You have a beautiful pool of your own. Much nicer than ours, actually." Karen's carefully constructed smile faltered. I told you, I'm having chemical problems. I drove by your house yesterday. Your pool looks fine to me. For a moment, Karen's mask slipped completely. Sarah saw fear there, desperation, and something else, calculation. Karen was weighing her options, deciding how much truth she could afford to reveal. You're right, Karen said finally. My pool is fine. So why are you here? Karen looked around the backyard, as if checking for surveillance equipment. Can I trust you? That depends on what you're about to tell me. I'm in trouble, Karen said quietly. Real trouble. And I need your help. Sarah set down her watering can. What kind of trouble? The kind that could destroy my family. My marriage. Everything I've worked for. Karen's voice broke slightly. I know how this looks. I know you think I'm just some entitled housewife who takes whatever she wants. But it's not like that. Then what is it like? Karen glanced toward the house, then back at Sarah. 3 months ago, I found out my husband was having an affair. Not just any affair, he was sleeping with his business partner's wife. If it came out, it would destroy both their companies, cost hundreds of people their jobs. Sarah felt a chill of recognition. This was familiar territory, the messy, complicated world of infidelity and its consequences. So you decided to have an affair of your own? Sarah asked. No, Karen said sharply. I decided to document his affair. To protect myself and my children if things went bad. I hired a private investigator, gathered evidence, prepared for the worst. And I discovered something much worse than adultery. Karen's voice dropped to a whisper. David isn't just cheating on me. He's been embezzling money from their construction projects. Skimming from materials budgets, overcharging clients, falsifying inspection reports. We are talking about millions of dollars over the past 5 years. Sarah's mind raced. If Karen was telling the truth, this wasn't about pool access or morning swims. This was about crime, fraud, and potentially dangerous people. What does this have to do with my pool? I need somewhere secure to meet with people. Somewhere private. Where David won't think to look. Your pool is perfect, it's close enough to my house that I can get here quickly, but far enough away that Davy. Thursday morning arrived with an unseasonable chill that seemed to creep into Sarah's bones. She'd barely slept, her mind racing through scenarios that grew progressively darker as the night wore on. By 5:30 a.m., she was stationed at her window. Coffee growing cold in her hands, watching for movement in the pre-dawn darkness. At 6 a.m. sharp, the gate opened. Karen entered quickly, followed by Marcus Chen and Rebecca Santos. But this time, they weren't alone. A fourth figure slipped through the gate, a woman Sarah didn't recognize. She was tall, athletic, wearing dark clothing that seemed designed to blend into shadows. Even from a distance, Sarah could see the bulge of a concealed weapon beneath her jacket. FBI, Sarah realized. The investigation had moved to a new level. The group gathered by the pool, their voices too low to hear clearly. Sarah grabbed her camera, zooming in on the newcomer's face. The woman looked professional, alert, constantly scanning the area with the practiced eye of someone accustomed to danger. Sarah's phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number, stay inside. Do not interfere. The meeting lasted exactly 12 minutes. Sarah watched as documents changed hands, photos were examined, and what looked like recording equipment was distributed. The FBI agent, Sarah was certain that's who she was, seemed to be giving instructions, pointing toward different areas of the neighborhood. When they dispersed, they left in different directions. Karen through the back gate, Marcus toward the street, Rebecca toward the mail truck parked 2 blocks away. The FBI agent simply vanished, one moment standing by the pool, the next gone without a trace. Sarah remained at her window, heart pounding. Whatever was happening, it was accelerating rapidly. At 7:15 a.m., as Mike was getting ready for work, Sarah's phone rang. Unknown number. Don't answer it, Mike said, noticing her hesitation. But Sarah knew she had to. Hello. Mrs. Henderson. The voice was female, professional, with a slight accent Sarah couldn't place. My name is Agent Sophia Reyes, FBI. I believe you witnessed a meeting in your backyard this morning. Sarah's blood ran cold. I'm sorry, I don't know what you're talking about. Mrs. Henderson, you're not in trouble. But we need to talk. Karen Mitchell has informed us that you're aware of the situation with her husband. We'd like to discuss your role in this investigation. My role? You're a former private investigator with an excellent reputation. Your assistance could be invaluable. Sarah glanced at Mike, who was watching her with growing concern. I can't talk right now. I understand. But Mrs. Henderson, you should know that David Mitchell has become aware that his wife is investigating him. The situation has become extremely dangerous for everyone involved. The line went dead. Sarah stared at her phone, her hands shaking. Mike was beside her in seconds. What's going on? He demanded. There was no point in lying anymore. Sarah told him everything: Karen's morning swims, the affair that wasn't an affair, the criminal conspiracy, the FBI investigation. She watched Mike's face cycle through disbelief, anger, and finally, terrified understanding. You got us involved with the FBI, he said quietly. I got us involved with stopping criminals. Same thing. Sarah, we have a daughter. We can't what? Look the other way while people steal millions of dollars. Ignore organized crime in our neighborhood. We can't risk Emma's safety for strangers. Before Sarah could respond, the doorbell rang. They froze, staring at each other. Mom? Emma's voice called from upstairs. Someone's at the door. Sarah looked through the front window and felt her stomach drop. David Mitchell stood on their porch, looking every inch. The successful businessman in his expensive suit and charming smile. But Sarah had seen the photographs now. She knew what that smile hid. Stay with Emma, she whispered to Mike. Don't let her come downstairs. Sarah opened the door, forcing herself to appear normal. David. What a surprise. What brings you by so early? Good morning, Sarah. I'm sorry to bother you, but I was hoping we could chat about Karen. Karen. I'm worried about her. She's been acting strangely lately, and I thought maybe you'd noticed something. You know how observant neighbors can be. David's smile never wavered, but his eyes were cold, calculating. Sarah realized he was studying her reaction, looking for tells that would reveal what she knew. I haven't noticed anything unusual, Sarah said carefully. Really? Because I have it on good authority that she's been spending time in your backyard. Early morning swims, perhaps. Sarah's mouth went dry. I don't know what you mean. Of course you don't. David's smile widened. The thing is, Sarah, my wife has been telling people some very disturbing stories about me. Stories that could damage my business, my reputation, my family. I'm sure you understand how upsetting that must be. I really don't know anything about. Let me be clearer, David interrupted, his voice dropping to a whisper. I know my wife has been meeting with people. I know she's been collecting information. And I know she's been using your property to do it. Sarah's hand tightened on the door handle. David, I think you should leave. In a moment. But first, I want you to understand something very important. My wife is having a nervous breakdown. The stress of our marriage, financial pressures, the demands of motherhood, it's all become too much for her. She's been making up stories, creating elaborate fantasies about criminal conspiracies and federal investigations. That's not, she's dangerous, Sarah. To herself, to others, to innocent families who get caught up in her delusions. The kindest thing you can do is stop enabling her. Stop providing her with a place to meet with the people who are encouraging these fantasies. David stepped closer, and Sarah caught a whiff of expensive cologne mixed with something else, the metallic scent of fear. I'd hate for anything to happen to your family because of my wife's illness, he continued. Emma's such a sweet girl. It would be tragic if she got hurt because her mother made poor choices. The threat was unmistakable. Sarah felt adrenaline flood her system, the same rush she'd experienced during her most dangerous cases. Get off my property, she said quietly. Of course. But Sarah, think very carefully about what you do next. Think about what matters most to you. Because some doors, once opened, can never be closed again. David turned and walked away, whistling softly. Sarah watched him get into his Mercedes and drive away, her entire body shaking with rage and terror. She closed the door and leaned against it, fighting to control her breathing. Mike appeared at the top of the stairs, Emma beside him. Who was that, Mommy? Emma asked. A neighbor, Sarah managed. Just a neighbor. But as she watched David Mitchell's car disappear around the corner, Sarah realized that everything had changed. David knew about the investigation. He knew about the meetings. And he just threatened her family. Sarah pulled out her phone and dialed the number Agent Reyes had called from. Agent Reyes. This is Sarah Henderson. We need to talk. Now. The meeting took place at a coffee shop 15 minutes outside the neighborhood. Agent Reyes was waiting. In a corner booth, looking like any other professional woman grabbing coffee before work. Only her eyes gave her away, they never stopped moving, cataloging exits, potential threats, the placement of every person in the room. Mrs. Henderson, she said as Sarah sat down. I'm glad you called. David Mitchell just threatened my family. Oh no. We've been monitoring his communications. He's becoming increasingly unstable. You've been monitoring, how long have you known about this? We've been investigating David Mitchell for 8 months. Karen came to us 6 weeks ago. With additional evidence. But we needed more time to build a comprehensive case. And now? Now we have a problem. David's behavior suggests he's preparing to eliminate witnesses. We need to move tonight. Sarah felt the coffee shop spin around her. Tonight. We are executing search warrants at midnight. David Mitchell, his business partner Richard Canning, and 3 other associates will be arrested simultaneously. We need Karen, Marcus, and Rebecca in protective custody before that happens. What about their families? We are relocating everyone. New identities, new locations, complete protection until the trials are over. Sarah stared at her coffee cup. What about my family? That's why I wanted to talk to you. David Mitchell sees you as a threat. He won't hesitate to eliminate that threat if he feels cornered. So what are you saying? I'm saying you have 2 choices. You can disappear tonight with your family, enter witness protection, and start a new life somewhere safe. Or you can help us ensure David Mitchell is taken down so completely that he'll never be able to hurt anyone again. How? Agent Reyes leaned forward. We need someone inside the neighborhood tonight. Someone who can monitor David's movements, alert us if he tries to run or hurt someone. Someone with your skills and experience. Sarah thought about Emma, sleeping peacefully at home. She thought about Mike, who'd married a woman he thought had left her dangerous past behind. She thought about the life they'd built, the safety they'd created, the normal suburban existence that was about to be shattered either way. If I help you, Sarah said slowly, what guarantees do I have that my family will be safe? None. Agent Reyes said honestly. But if you don't help us, David Mitchell will spend the rest of his life knowing you were part of the investigation that brought him down. Even from prison, he has connections. People who owe him favors. Sarah spent the afternoon preparing for what could be the most dangerous night of her life. She sent Emma to her mother's house with a story about a romantic dinner with Mike. She briefed Mike on the situation, watching his face cycle through terror, anger, and finally, grim acceptance. I should stay, he said for the 5th time. Help you? No. If something goes wrong, Emma needs at least one parent alive. Sarah checked the encryption device Agent Reyes had given her. Besides, this is what I used to do. I know how to handle myself. That was different. You weren't going up against organized crime then. Sarah kissed him, tasting fear on both their lips. I wasn't protecting our daughter then either. At 6 p.m., Mike left to pick up Emma from her grandmother's and take her to his brother's house 3 states away. The cover story was a spontaneous long weekend to visit Uncle Tom. Emma was excited about missing school. She had no idea she might never see her house again. At 7 p.m., Sarah was alone. The communication device crackled to life at exactly 8 p.m. Henderson, this is Control. Status report. In position. No movement at the Mitchell house. Copy. Be advised, subject David Mitchell left his office at 6:30 p.m. Current location unknown. Sarah felt her stomach clench. He's not at home. Negative. Vehicle GPS was disabled at 6:45 p.m. We are working on locating him. Sarah moved to her upstairs window with the best view of the Mitchell house. The Tudor-style home looked peaceful. In the evening light, warm yellow windows suggesting a normal family evening. Karen's Mercedes was in the driveway, but David's was nowhere to be seen. Control, I can see Karen's car. House appears occupied. Roger. Karen Mitchell and her children are secure. That's not her in the house. Then who? Decoy team. We moved the family out at 4 p.m. House is currently occupied by federal agents. Sarah realized the scope of what was happening. This wasn't just an arrest, it was a carefully orchestrated operation designed to draw David Mitchell out. At 8:30 p.m., her phone rang. Karen's number. Don't answer came immediately through the communication device. But Sarah was already reaching for the phone. Hello. Sarah. Karen's voice was tight with terror. Oh God, Sarah, I'm so sorry. Karen. Where are you? I can't. He has. The line crackled with static, then cleared. Sarah, David knows everything. About the meetings, about you, about the FBI. He's coming for you. Karen, where are you? The old quarry. Off Route 47. He is Marcus and Rebecca. He wants to make a trade. Sarah's blood turned to ice. What kind of trade? You and me for them. He says if we don't come, he'll kill them and disappear. Sarah, he's lost his mind. He's talking about cleaning house, eliminating loose ends. Through the communication device, Sarah could hear frantic activity. Henderson, do not engage. Repeat, do not engage. Karen, the FBI will know. Karen's voice was desperate. He says if he sees any federal agents, he starts killing people. He wants just us. 2 suburban housewives who got in over their heads. How long do we have? 1 hour. Come alone to the quarry access road. If you're not there by 10 p.m. The line went dead. Henderson, this is Control. You will not pursue this course of action. Sarah turned off the communication device. She knew she was making a mistake. Every instinct from her private investigator days screamed that this was a trap, that David Mitchell was manipulating them into an isolated location where he could eliminate all the witnesses at once. But she also knew that Marcus Chen had 2 young children who needed their father. That Rebecca Santos was a divorced woman whose only crime was trying to help. That Karen Mitchell, for all her faults, was a mother trying to protect her family from a monster. Sarah checked her .38 special, the one she'd kept locked in her bedroom safe since retiring from investigation work. She'd hoped never to touch it again. But some fights didn't give you the luxury of hope. The quarry was a 20-minute drive through increasingly rural roads. Sarah passed the last streetlight at 9:40 p.m., heading into darkness that seemed to swallow her headlights. The access road was barely more than a dirt track, winding through dense woods toward what had once been a thriving limestone operation. She parked where Karen had instructed and checked her phone. No signal. Of course. The quarry opened before her like a wound in the earth, a deep pit filled with black water that reflected nothing. Floodlights mounted on temporary poles created harsh pools of white light around the old equipment. In the center of the largest lit area, 3 figures sat bound to chairs. Karen, Marcus, and Rebecca. But where was David? You came. His voice came from behind her, calm and conversational. I have to admit, I wasn't sure you would. Sarah turned slowly, keeping her hands visible. David Mitchell stood at the edge of the light, looking like he'd just stepped out of a boardroom meeting. Only his eyes gave away his state of mind. They were wild, unfocused, the eyes of a man who'd crossed a line he could never uncross. Let them go, David. You want me, here I am. Oh, I don't want you, Sarah. I need you. There's a difference. He gestured toward the chairs. Please, join your friends. I don't think so. David smiled and pulled out a gun, not a Saturday night special, but a professional-grade weapon that looked military issue. I'm afraid I insist. Sarah raised her hands, the .38 hidden in the waistband at her back, feeling useless. As she walked toward the chairs, she counted enemies, David, weapons, at least one, exits, two that she could see, and cover, minimal. Old habits. You know, David said conversationally as he zip-tied Sarah's hands to the fourth chair, I really admired your work as a private investigator. Very thorough. Very professional. It's a shame you couldn't mind your own business. It's a shame you couldn't stop stealing from people. Stealing? David laughed. I prefer to think of it as creative financing. Do you have any idea how expensive it is to maintain the lifestyle my family expects? The house, the cars, the private schools, the country club memberships. So you decided to steal millions of dollars. I decided to take what I'd earned. What I deserved. David's voice hardened. Do you know how many people I've made rich over the years? How many jobs I've created? How many families have prospered because of my vision and hard work? Sarah looked at Karen, whose face was bruised and swollen. Is that what you told yourself when you started beating your wife? Karen brought this on herself. All of this. David gestured around the quarry. If she'd just been content with her life, none of this would be necessary. None of what would be necessary? David smiled and Sarah felt her blood chill. The clean-up. You see, Sarah, I've spent the last 6 months preparing for this possibility. Offshore accounts, new identities, exit strategies. I can disappear tonight and resurface anywhere in the world with enough money to live comfortably for the rest of my life. What about your children? For the first time, David's composure cracked. My children will be better off without me. Karen will tell them I died in an accident. They'll collect the life insurance, live quietly, never know what their father really was. You're going to fake your death. I'm going to stage a tragic murder-suicide. A man driven to madness by his wife's infidelity, who kills her and her co-conspirators before taking his own life. David pulled out a second gun, this one smaller, more personal. The FBI will find 4 bodies and a confession detailing how Karen's affair with Marcus led to increasingly desperate measures. Sarah's mind raced. The FBI knows better. They have evidence. They have accusations from dead people. Without living witnesses, their case falls apart. They have documentation, which can be explained as an elaborate frame job orchestrated by my unstable wife and her lover. David checked his watch. Speaking of which, we should get started. I have a plane to catch. He raised the larger gun, pointing it at Marcus. Any last words? Wait. Sarah said desperately. You're making a mistake. I don't think so. The FBI knows I'm here. If I don't check in, you turned off your communication device at 8:47 p.m. Very touching, really. The suburban mom going rogue to save her friends. David's finger tightened on the trigger. Don't worry. Your sacrifice will be remembered. The gunshot was deafeningly loud in the enclosed space of the quarry. But it wasn't David's gun that fired. Agent Sophia Reyes stepped out of the shadows, smoking pistol in her hand, as David Mitchell crumpled to the ground. Behind her, a dozen FBI agents emerged from concealment positions around the quarry. Federal agents. Everyone stay calm. Sarah stared in shock as agents swarmed the area, checking David's body, cutting the zip ties, securing the scene. Agent Reyes approached her, holstering her weapon. Henderson, you have terrible instincts for following orders. How did you find you? The communication device has a GPS tracker. We've been monitoring your location since you left your house. Reyes helped Sarah to her feet. Did you really think we'd let you walk into this alone? But he said no federal agents. He said a lot of things. Most of them lies. Reyes nodded toward David's body. David Mitchell wasn't planning to flee the country. He was planning to kill everyone who could testify against him, then claim temporary insanity. His lawyers already had the paperwork filed. Sarah looked around the quarry, taking in the scope of the operation. Hidden cameras, concealed positions, sniper nests in the tree line. The FBI had been here for hours. You used us as bait, she realized. We used you as witness. 3 months later, Sarah Henderson stood in her backyard, watching Mike install a new lock on the pool gate. The morning was crisp with early autumn air, and the water reflected golden leaves that had begun their annual surrender to gravity. The pool looked the same as it always had. Crystal blue water, careful landscaping, the peaceful suburban oasis they'd created over 12 years of marriage. But Sarah knew she would never look at it the same way again. Mom, can I go swimming? Emma called from the back door, already in her swimsuit despite the October chill. It's too cold, sweetheart. Maybe next summer. Will it be warm enough next summer? Sarah smiled at her daughter's literal interpretation of time. Yes, baby. It'll be warm enough next summer. Emma disappeared back into the house, and Sarah was alone with Mike and the ghosts of what had happened here. You don't have to keep it, you know, Mike said, testing the new lock mechanism. The pool. We could fill it in, put in a garden. And let him win. He's dead, Sarah. He can't win anything anymore. Sarah touched the new security camera Mike had installed, one of 6 that now monitored their property. The FBI had recommended them, along with the upgraded alarm system, the reinforced doors, and the panic room disguised as a closet in Emma's bedroom. Just precautions, Agent Reyes had assured them. David Mitchell's organization was finished. His associates either dead or in federal custody. But some precautions were worth taking. Karen stopped by yesterday, Sarah said. Mike paused in his work. How is she? Different. Stronger, maybe. Or maybe just tired. Sarah picked up a fallen leaf, twirling it between her fingers. The kids are doing well. Madison got into Northwestern early admission. Tyler made varsity. Soccer. And Karen. She's thinking about going back to school. Law enforcement, maybe. Or social work. She says she wants to help other women who are trapped like she was. Sarah didn't mention that Karen had also asked if Sarah would consider coming out of retirement, starting a consulting firm for domestic abuse cases. There were so many women who needed help, Karen had said. So many families trapped by men who used money and power and fear to maintain control. Sarah had said she'd think about it. The back gate opened and Sarah tensed automatically, an old habit that might never fade. But it was just Rebecca Santos, carrying a small package. Morning delivery, Rebecca said with a smile. Thought I'd bring it personally. Rebecca looked good. Rested. The haunted expression she'd worn during the investigation had been replaced by something Sarah had rarely seen on the mail carrier's face, hope. Any word on the trial date? Mike asked. Spring, probably. The federal prosecutor says it's mostly a formality now. Between David's confession and all the evidence they seized, most of his associates are pleading out. Rebecca handed Sarah the package. This one's from Marcus Chen, actually. Sarah looked at the return address. Portland, Oregon. Marcus and his family had relocated there after the trial, new identities provided by the Witness Protection Program. Jennifer Chen never learned the full truth about her husband's involvement. The official story was that Marcus had discovered construction fraud and become a whistleblower. Sometimes the truth was a luxury that innocent people couldn't afford. Sarah opened the package carefully. Inside was a photograph, Marcus with his wife and children at what looked like a beach, everyone smiling and healthy and alive. On the back, Marcus had written, "Thank you for giving us a future. A friend." He's doing well, Rebecca said. New job, new life. His kids love Oregon. And Jennifer. Never needs to know how close she came to losing everything. After Rebecca left, Sarah and Mike sat by the pool in comfortable silence. The afternoon sun warmed their faces, and for a moment, Sarah could almost pretend they were just another suburban couple enjoying a quiet Saturday. "Do you regret it?" Mike asked suddenly. "Which part?" "Any of it. Getting involved. Helping Karen. Almost getting killed." Sarah considered the question. 3 months ago, her biggest worry had been an inconsiderate neighbor using her pool. Now she knew what it felt like to stare down the barrel of a gun held by a man with nothing left to lose. She knew what it sounded like when that man died 10 feet away from her. She also knew that Karen Mitchell was free, that Marcus Chen was building a new life with his family, that Rebecca Santos had been promoted to postal supervisor and was dating a nice man she'd met at church. She knew that David Mitchell's victims, dozens of families who'd been overcharged for construction work, investors who'd been defrauded, employees who'd been cheated out of wages, were getting their money back. She knew that Tyler and Madison Mitchell were in therapy but were healing, that they'd been told their father died trying to protect them from dangerous people, that they would grow up believing their father was a hero rather than a monster. Sometimes lies were kinder than truth. "No," Sarah said finally. "I don't regret it. Even though our lives will never be the same. Especially because our lives will never be the same." Mike took her hand. "What do you mean?" "I mean we learned something, Mike. We learned that the safe little world we thought we lived in was an illusion. Bad things don't just happen to other people in other neighborhoods. They happen everywhere, to everyone, and most of the time good people look the other way because it's easier. And now we know better. Now we know what we are capable of when it matters." That evening, after Emma was asleep and Mike was watching television, Sarah found herself standing at the kitchen window, looking out at the pool. The underwater lights cast an ethereal blue glow across the backyard, and she could almost see Karen Mitchell cutting through the water with those perfect strokes. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Mrs. Henderson. My name is Jennifer Walsh. I got your number from Karen Mitchell. I think my husband is stealing money from his company and I don't know what to do. Could we talk?" Sarah stared at the message for a long time. Then she typed back, "Of course. When would be good for you? Because some fights chose you. And once you'd learned how to fight them, you couldn't pretend you didn't know how." 3 days later, Sarah had her first client in 8 years. Jennifer Walsh was a teacher whose husband managed finances for a local charity. She'd discovered irregularities in their personal accounts, unexplained deposits and withdrawals that coincided with his access to the charity's funds. She was terrified of confronting him, terrified of destroying their family, terrified of doing nothing while he potentially stole money meant for disadvantaged children. Sarah listened to Jennifer's story in the same coffee shop where she'd met Agent Reyes and felt the familiar rush of purpose that came with helping someone who had nowhere else to turn. "What do you think I should do?" Jennifer asked. "I think," Sarah said carefully, "you should gather evidence. Document everything. Protect yourself and your children. And then we should call the FBI. If you want my help, you have it. I know people. Good people who know how to handle situations like this." Jennifer Walsh started crying, the relieved tears of someone who'd been carrying an impossible burden alone and had finally found someone willing to help carry it. Later that evening, Sarah called Karen Mitchell. "I've been thinking about your offer," Sarah said. "About the consulting firm. And I think there are a lot of people who need help. People who don't know where to turn when the person they trust most betrays them. So you're in." Sarah looked out at her pool, remembering the morning Karen had first appeared in the water. It seemed like a lifetime ago, but it had only been 6 months. 6 months that had changed everything. "I'm in. But we do this right. Professional licenses. Proper procedures, full cooperation with law enforcement. No more vigilante operations." "Agreed. What should we call it?" Sarah smiled. "How about Henderson and Mitchell Consulting?" specializing in domestic financial crimes and family protection services. I like it. When do we start? We already have. That night, Sarah lay in bed next to Mike, listening to the sounds of their house settling around them. Emma was asleep down the hall, safe in her room with its hidden panic button and reinforced door. The security system hummed quietly, monitoring every entrance, every window, every approach to their home. Some people might call it paranoia. Sarah called it preparation. Because she'd learned that safety wasn't something you could take for granted. It was something you had to fight for, every day, in ways both large and small. She'd also learned that fighting didn't always mean violence. Sometimes it meant documentation. Sometimes it meant patience. Sometimes it meant helping one scared person at a time until they found the courage to stand up for themselves. Karen Mitchell had snuck into her pool daily, and yes, she'd been banned from the entire neighborhood not for trespassing, but because her house had been seized as evidence. In a federal investigation, the Mitchell family had relocated to Karen's sister's house 2 towns over, where they were slowly rebuilding their lives away from the shadow of David's crimes. But the real punishment hadn't been Karen's exile from Willowbrook Estates. The real punishment had been David Mitchell's complete destruction, his reputation ruined, his crimes exposed, his victims vindicated, his family finally free of his control. Justice had been served, but not in the way anyone had expected. As Sarah drifted toward sleep, she thought about the morning Karen had first